Well, welcome. This is the 6:30 p.m. Press conference for the Kincade incident here in Sonoma, Napa, and Lake counties. My name is Jonathan Cox, Division Chief and Information Officer with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 6. Just a few things to start off. If you can mute your telephone if you do have a ringer on, and secondly, if you do need to make a phone or take a conversation, we ask you to take it outside of this area. As usual, we will have time for questions and answers at the conclusion of the formal speakers. Additionally, we will have a Spanish language version at the end of the English language version of this press conference. Just to start things off, as everybody is probably well aware, since 24 hours ago when we were last here, we've made some pretty significant progress on the fire. The winds that we were talking about yesterday did not materialize to the extremes that we were fearful of, and that gave us a big opportunity to increase that containment overnight and again today. In addition, I would say that there's a lot of optimism that we have turned the corner for the better on this fire, and I think that is indicative of the fact that a lot of evacuation orders and warnings were lifted this afternoon. Just some numbers really quick. The fire is now 76,825 acres, so we're not seeing much growth in the perimeter. 45% contained now, up another 15% from this morning, and over 4,200 fire personnel out on the line. That includes over 300 fire agencies from within California, as well as fire agencies from 12 other states. We can confirm that 266 structures have been destroyed, 133 of those being residential structures. 47 have been damaged, 32 of those are residential structures. I think it's important to note here, although the count of damaged and destroyed structures continues to climb, that does not mean that they have been destroyed in the past 24 hours. Our damage inspection teams are really catching up on the week's worth of work that's out there. I wouldn't say this was as a result of last night. With that, I'll hand it over to our National Weather Service representative, Alex Hume.
All right, good evening. So red flag warning that we had in effect over the last 24 hours, it expired this afternoon at 4 p.m. Those winds that we did see earlier this morning, the winds have subsided quite a bit, but we are remaining in a very dry air mass over the next several days, even into next week. So keep that in mind. Even though this is the end of the wind event, we are expecting to see those continued dry conditions over several days. Now, as far as any rainfall, we do not see any rainfall in sight. Expect to see very dry conditions at least for the next 7 days. We do have a freeze warning that is in effect for tonight going into tomorrow morning. We're expecting low temperatures to dip down into the upper 20s and low 30s for especially the valley locations. Expect to see those freezing temperatures affecting especially vulnerable populations that are without any access to heat or proper shelter. Those folks are going to be at the highest risk for those freezing temperatures tonight. And also those frost and freeze conditions are going to be affecting sensitive vegetation and possibly damaging any exposed or unprotected outdoor plumbing. So keep that in mind. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Speaking next from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office is Sheriff Essick.
Good evening. Wow, what a week. Seems like we've been doing this for a month. It's only been a week. It's been a very exhausting, a very scary event for many of us in this county. But we've made it through this together, and I'm very proud to be part of Sonoma County and the resiliency of our people. We stuck together, we evacuated together, and we got some good news today. That good news was that we were able to repopulate major areas of the county. We have lifted evacuation orders and reduced many areas now to just evacuation warnings, stepping down the threat. Currently, we still have 5,788 people under evacuation order. Those people primarily live in the burn zones, or their residences were in the burn zone or very near to the burn zone. We anticipate keeping those 5,788 people under mandatory evacuation for the foreseeable future until we're able to get into those areas, do damage assessment, check for utility lines that are down, trees that are down, and inspect for environmental health and safety. So with the reduction in the order, we also still have 64,000 people under an evacuation warning. So those people have been allowed to return to their homes. However, they're still cautioned that if conditions were to significantly change, we may have to place them back under order. Although, as we've heard tonight, we believe that most of the threat is now in our rearview mirror, and we're moving forward here. At the Sheriff's Office over the next couple of days, we will be winding down our mutual aid. So currently we have over 200 peace officers from throughout the northern part of the state, along with the National Guard, providing security in the evacuation areas. We'll start to wind that down over the next day or so. We will still have our staff at the Sheriff's Office significantly upstaffed. We'll still be looking more to our local partners over the next few days. That would be the local office of the California Highway Patrol, the Santa Rosa Police Department, and some of our other local law enforcement agencies to help bolster our ranks. But many of the first responders and peace officers who responded from throughout the state will start to go home over the next couple of days. Arrests. Nothing has changed as far as the arrest for looting. We previously reported that we had made 3 arrests, and that remains as is, and I've already been briefed on that. However, unfortunately, we had some additional arrests in the last 24 hours where people were entering evacuation zones, and I'm sorry to report that we've made 10 arrests in the last 24 hours. Those people were contacted. They had no apparent business. They were not able to prove any sort of residency in the area, and based on each individual case by case, deputies were able to make a probable cause to arrest those people for prowling or entering an evacuation zone with no apparent business. So next steps, we're going to continue to repopulate areas. We're going to have deputies in your neighborhoods as you return. So if you have questions or concerns, please flag down one of our deputies or local peace officers who are helping out. They will assist you in any way they can. There are hazards out there, as we've talked about before. So as you return to your neighborhoods, be careful. Look for downed trees, look for downed utility lines, and use caution. Thank you so much to Sonoma County for your patience and support. I think we made the right decision to evacuate. I understand how tough it's been on people being in evacuation shelters and being away from home, but we're making progress here, and we're getting you back home. The resilience, as I've mentioned, the resilience of Sonoma County is amazing. It exemplifies who we are in Sonoma County, what we've learned over the last few years about the hazards that are in this area, this great area that we live. And it really shows the spirit and strength of everyone in Sonoma County. So thank you for your patience, and hope we don't have to talk about this too much longer, and we'll have this in the rearview mirror. Thank you.
Next, from the California Highway Patrol, Captain Wolf.
Good evening. I'm Captain Aristotle Wolf with the California Highway Patrol. I'm your local CHP commander. The Highway Patrol continues to support the sheriff in their mission for keeping folks out of evacuation zones and burn zones. We are bringing staffing from out of our area, our local area, from all over the Bay Area, but we have reduced back from statewide support. We have experienced traffic conditions increasing. I'm sure you, if you're on your way back to the homes, may have experienced some of that. Around 3 p.m. they started picking up, and they are picking up in locations that are not typical of normal commute patterns, but we're no strangers to traffic here in the Bay Area, certainly not on the 101 corridor, so I would not say that's anything worse than a very, very heavy commute. We have not had significant increases in calls for service or any kind of unusual traffic incident, so that's good news. As the sheriff has mentioned, we've been very strong throughout this, and from the Highway Patrol's perspective, the community's been very supportive of being patient on the roadways, following our directions about hazards, and taking extra time. This is no time to change that. From our perspective, from a traffic safety perspective, there's nothing inherently dangerous about reoccupying and going back to your homes. What will make it dangerous is bad behavior or bad judgment. So please continue to shine like you have. Please obey our road closures, including signs, because we are now not just dealing with evacuated areas, but we're dealing with previous burned areas that we are excluding you from. So if there is a sign or an officer there, it is absolutely for your safety. So please pay attention to that. Stay strong and welcome home.
Speaking next is Celeste Phillip from the Sonoma Health Agency.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Celeste Phillip, the health officer for Sonoma County. After a very long week, as we heard from the sheriff, and a safe return home, many of us are looking forward to sleeping in our own beds and having a home-cooked meal. If you are in parts of the county where the power was shut off, we want to remind you about food safety. Food that has been in a refrigerator that has lost power for more than 4 hours, unfortunately, is no longer safe to eat. So please avoid the temptation for your favorite treat in your refrigerator, and when in doubt, throw it out. We also want to remind everyone that there were a number of healthcare facilities that also lost power. So if you are an individual resident in our community that needs a medication refill and your doctor's office is still closed or you're not able to get in, we have special provisions in emergencies for you to be able to go to a pharmacy, preferably the pharmacy you normally go to, and you can get refills without having a physician or other healthcare provider authorization during this period. So please keep that in mind. You do not have to go to an emergency room if it's just for a medication refill. Finally, I want to focus on air quality. We are seeing that air quality is improving, which we love living here and being outside, but keep in mind that those conditions can change depending on the wind and the fact that we still have an active fire that is that we have to consider. So if you sense smoke, you smell smoke, and you know you have underlying health conditions that might put you at risk for other complications, please stay inside as much as possible if you have any concerns, and we will continue to update the advisories based on air quality changes that will occur in the next few days. Thank you. Stay safe.
And our last formal speaker with closing comments from the Sonoma Board of Supervisors, Chair of the Board, Supervisor Rabbit.
Thank you very much. Once again, the residents of Sonoma County continue to be incredibly grateful to our firefighters, to the law enforcement personnel, the support staff, and all of our federal, state, and local partners. We are also grateful to our neighboring counties and the hundreds of volunteers who, without hesitation, stepped in to help their neighbors. Thank you, of course, to the residents of Sonoma County for your continued empathy and patience. We are fortunate that most of our 190 or so thousand evacuated residents were allowed to return today, and those obviously who live closer to the fire areas, as the sheriff mentioned, continue to remain under mandatory evacuation. And we know that you too are eager to get home, and we again ask for your patience as firefighters continue to squelch this fire. Power restoration is underway and will continue through the evening. The fire may, of course, affect some restoration areas in some areas. Shelters remain open for those under evacuation and not yet home. As was mentioned, a cold weather warning remains in effect. And it is a great pleasure to announce the more mundane things, a sign of getting back to normal, but curbside trash service will resume on a regular schedule, and residents may put out extra garbage in plastic bags at no additional cost. But I think it's a good idea if you keep any spoiled food secured in the bin. The County of Sonoma pledges to assist those whose homes were destroyed or damaged by the wildfire in the most expeditious way possible, similar to the process that was put in place after the 2017 wildfires. A local assistance center, or LAC, will soon be established within the city of Healdsburg. The Board of Supervisors will meet tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. to ratify the proclamation of local emergency, get a quick update on the fire and recovery status, and allocate funds to cover the immediate expenses. And lastly, once again, we ask for your continued patience. Continue to be kind to one another and care for one another as you always have. Please look at socoemergency.org, SOCO emergency.org, or use 211 for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to summarize, as we close this out, overnight tonight, firefighters will continue to be out there on the line. You may see a significant number of firefighters as you return home. They'll be out reinforcing the control lines that are already in place, as well as patrolling for any hot spots. We will also have areas of the fire where we do repair work, essentially fire line repair to any areas that may have been damaged. And a final note is just a large thank you to the group behind me, who's literally stood behind me every time I've come up to this podium, and it really is indicative of the group mentality and the cooperation that has been throughout this entire incident. And we would not be here today if it was not for every single agency, organization, and representative behind me. With that, I'm happy to open it up for any questions. Yeah, so now, what we call the flaming front is a little bit behind us now. We're not as concerned with a fire coming into a community with force. Now we're looking at the things that are the secondary hazards. We're looking at the trees that might fall. We're looking at, the hot pits of ember that may still be warm and smoldering that pose a hazard to firefighters. We're looking at other fire line potential or community areas that may have been damaged that may be a threat to kind of general safety. That is the kind of the mode and the phase that we're in right now. And that is, although difficult within itself, a welcome break from actually, fighting the front of a fire. Yeah, that's a good question. So, I had the opportunity to go actually take a flight of the perimeter and really get a good feeling for it. And one of my first takeaways while I was out there was the number of resources we have on the line of this fire is very apparent once you get up in the air. And I think we had the opportunity to bring in a large number of resources early on in this incident. And the fire line coming up to the back of Windsor and Santa Rosa and the perimeter that was put in over the last few days is really a testament to all the sweat and hours of physical labor that goes into 1% containment. And that is really the bottom line of all of this, is the number of firefighters that are out, or the hard work that was done, the fact that the community left and trusted the first responders to take care of business, really all came together to prove successful, and we're reaping the rewards of that investment right now. Yeah, so we did have some activity over kind of on the Lake Sonoma Napa County line area, the bottom of Mount St. Helena over there. A little bit of fire activity there. The good news is when there's only a little bit of fire activity, there's a lot of resources on it. I was watching the air tankers literally load and return, helicopters constantly going back and forth. So that's the last kind of active area that we're seeing right now. I also want to kind of note that we can't let our guard down until we get to that 80-90% mark. There's still that potential, but the confidence level has gone way up over the last 24 hours. We know how difficult it is for firefighters to battle incidents in the heat. What challenges does that make? Yeah, that's a great question. We usually think of firefighters or fires as being an overwhelmingly hot experience. I saw a photo online this morning of the water dripping off the back of one of the engines froze, and it created an icicle off the rear bumper of the engine. So we are seeing some extreme conditions out there. The good thing about firefighters is we have a lot of gear, so we can put a lot of gear on. We can put our structural jackets on, we can put our structural hoods on, and we can really keep warm. But it is a good consideration. I think for the public especially, it's something to be considered of with the kind of code blue environment that Sonoma County has at the moment. All right. Yep.
I'm not aware of any reports of people impersonating firefighters. I can dive deeper into that and get back to you. Of the 10 people that we've arrested in the last 24 hours, those are people that entered evacuation zones against orders. And as I've mentioned before, we want to be compassionate and caring for those who are experiencing anxiety and entering evacuation areas. Generally, what we've been doing is directing people out of those areas with kindness and compassion and making sure we maintain those lines. However, in these 10 instances that I'm talking about now, these are people who clearly disobeyed our directions to stay out of those areas. These are people who had no apparent reason for being there. They were not residents. They were not business owners. They were clearly, on a case-by-case basis, up to no good. They were there looking for crimes of opportunity, prowling, looking to take advantage of the situation. So I feel confident that we had the proper probable cause to make those arrests, and we will be presenting those cases to the district attorney's office for prosecution.
All right, we'll conclude there with the English language version. Thank you for being here. Please stand by for the Spanish language version now.